You're listening to Nights with Steve Price. You can follow Steve on Twitter, Steve Price Media.
Well, this next story, I would never ever be involved in what the researcher Malcolm Burt is involved in, because I've got to tell you that I have never ever been brave enough to set foot on a roller coaster. I've been on some carnival rides. I don't even particularly like Ferris wheels because I have this sort of inbuilt fear of heights. It's not overt, but it's something I'm not comfortable with. I would never go on a big roller coaster. My children have laughed about it. My wife's happy to go on roller coasters. I just find them tremendously frightening things. Well, a Queensland researcher by the name of Malcolm Burt, as I mentioned, is doing a master's on roller coasters, travelling around the world and investigating why people are scared to get on them. Malcolm, good evening to you.
Good evening.
Are you scared of roller coasters yourself?
Well, it's funny when you were saying that. I'm actually terrified of heights, which is it's odd, but you needn't feel ashamed. But the thing is, if I'm going to research these things, I have to get on them.
Yeah, I don't know about that. I reckon you could do a good research study without actually getting on them, because they are pretty scary things. How did this come about? Where did your interest in this research come from?
I was actually a pretty fat little nerd of a kid living in rural Queensland, and I always thought that these parks, the parks where roller coasters live, they're advertised as being a trip away from the everyday, an escape from the everyday. So I just wanted to get there and be with the same kind of people that I was hoping would be there and get on these incredible rides, because I thought if I could just get on a big roller coaster, then I'll have something to boast about. So that's actually where it started from. And then, of course, I got older and was able to go around the world and get research grants and actually study them formally. So
because when you're a kid, it's almost like a dare, isn't it? I'll go if you go.
Absolutely.
But you've got to have someone brave enough to put their hand up in the first place. Then you almost, as your research found, that people get shamed into doing it?
That's a really good point, in that it's about peer pressure. That if everyone in your group is going to go on a ride, even if you're absolutely terrified, you'll do it. Conversely, if everyone is not going to go on a ride and you kind of want to go on it, you won't do it. It's really, really odd. So you see a lot of people around the world that are probably just as scared as I am of heights, but they try to act very brave by going on these rides. But the silly part about it is, they're not actually dangerous at all. They're made out to be incredibly dangerous, and they promote themselves as being dangerous, so they're a daring thrill, and if you go on them, you need to pat yourself on the back. But it's a funny illusion that they're not actually dangerous at all. Probably
no more dangerous than getting on an aircraft to fly somewhere.
Well, it's funny that you brought that up, because a lot of people say, oh, no, I couldn't go on them because I don't like the sense of losing control. And then I always say, well, do you get on a plane? Do you get on a bus? It's exactly the same. But
do you let people drive you around? Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. It's the same loss of control. But the planes and the buses aren't pretending to be, huge, dangerous, daring thrills that if you go on, you need to slap yourself on the back for.
I think your research is also, and I find it fascinating, I think your research has found that the most frightening part is often standing in the queue waiting to get on.
Right, absolutely. There was some research done in actually the University of Nottingham, where they wind people up with sensors that would check your respiration and your pulse and all that sort of stuff, to test where you would think you'd be scared on this particular roller coaster that people were getting on versus what actually happened. And what they found was that people are off the charts in the queue. And it sounds crazy, but when you think about the way these rides operate, again, they're designed to be intimidating, and they are. When you're waiting in the queue, you're actually in a fight or flight state, where you're literally going, am I going to do this? Am I not going to do this? I don't know. When you get on the ride, you commit to a fight state. But ultimately you're pretty useless, because all you can really do is scream or, wet your pants. But you actually move from two different psychological states, which I think is fascinating.
How far and wide have you travelled, and how's Australia compare in terms of scary roller coasters, and what's the worst one you've seen?
I've been all around the world to Europe and Asia, and a lot in the US. Asia is building what seems like a new theme park every 2 weeks. It's incredible. The parks in Australia, they're small because we have a commensurately smaller population. So you often see people like, no, I don't like these rides in Australia, but I think they're fantastic. But it's just simply a different kind of population mix that we have here versus overseas. I think the one that I was most scared on was actually on top of a tower in Las Vegas. It's called the Stratosphere Tower. So if you imagine I mean, I compare it to the Sydney Tower. Imagine a roller coaster just kind of winding around the top and kind of veering off the edge, coming back. That was pretty hideous. But there's a fantastic one in Ohio called Top Thrill Dragster, and it goes from 0 to 190 kilometres an hour in less than 4 seconds, and it goes 420 feet high, and it's an absolute blast.
I think there's one in Dubai that features Ferrari at Ferrari World, which sounds like that's pretty full on as well.
That's the fastest one in the world right now. It's very impressive.
And I play golf at a place in Japan called Rizutsu, which has actually got a roller coaster theme park. So the only things in there are roller coasters. So you play on this golf course across the road, and you look across there, and there's about 7 or 8 roller coasters in a row.
Sounds great.
Yeah, I think you need to get there. So when the PhD is finished, is there a particular thrill-seeker type character trait that people show that absolutely get obsessed with these things?
I used to think that it was kind of, nature versus nurture, that, you could have some people grow up in the same family and they'd be in the same sort of social strata, but one, the people in the family would be terrified of these roads and another one wouldn't. And I thought, well, maybe they just grew up differently somehow. But there is some research which seems to suggest it's biological, that some people have what the researchers are calling a T gene or a thrill gene, and that gene predisposes some people to risk-taking behaviour like driving too fast, gambling, smoking, drugs, extreme rides, and, jumping out of planes and that sort of thing. So it's possible that some people are just wired differently.
Well, I tip my hat to you for doing it, Malcolm, because it is a scary, scary thing. It's a fascinating research project. Nice to talk to you. Thanks for your time tonight.
Thank you very much.
Malcolm Burt.
You're listening to Nights with Steve Price.